It feels like it's been a long while since I've been on YouTube, and it has really. It's been quite a few months of being in the workshop. My hands are looking about 10 years older than they did before, but I'm finally ready to put out my first guitar model, and that's something I've been leading to for a long time. So I wanted to introduce you to my own little guitar company, SmokeStack Electric Guitar Co. I'll tell you more about the name in a minute, but just to go back really quickly, when I was about 15 or 16, and when Amazon wasn't, you know, like a global evil villain that we can't all stop using, I ordered a copy of this book. This isn't the copy, this is one I bought recently. This book has been around since the 80s, helping people make guitars. And when I was about 15 and playing guitar every hour I possibly could instead of probably doing homework, I had a copy of this and I thought, wonder if I could start making my own guitar. It was pretty clear after looking through the book just for a brief amount of time that it wasn't really feasible then. I didn't have the tools or the time or the whatever. And then I put that idea to bed for like 20 years. I'm going to be 40 next year, so I figure now is a better time than any to just get on with it, right? So I bought a copy of this, but to be honest, with some courses I've done and with YouTube, it's much easier now to make guitars, at least, than it used to be, or easier to get into it anyway. So let's talk about this guitar here. I'm pretty happy with this. Now, I always had a plan to make my own vintage style S-type guitar, Stratocaster type guitar that was a baritone, right? I love baritones. I have a Castadosa Conches baritone, which is an amazing guitar, and it's very much from the personality of Carlos Lopez, who was a Fender master builder, and I love what he's doing. But I really wanted to make something that looked and felt like a vintage Strat. I love Strats, probably my favorite type of guitar. You know, I can argue that there's a few of my favorite types of guitar, like most of us, but I always come back to Strats. You know, my Dale Wilson Strat is the guitar that I just naturally pick up every time I walk in. And I want my guitars to feel like that, the ones I make. I want them to feel like they're individual and full of personality, and I've got my own ways of doing that. And I'm going to let you in on a few of those in a second. Why don't we hear a bit more first? I'm playing through the 2-Rock Joey Landreth amp today with the harmonic tremolo on, and I'm plugged just into the Charlie Pedals Fuzz Face, which is, if not my favorite pedal of all time, up in the top 3 or 4 for sure. I use this pedal a lot. Yeah. Okay, let's take a closer look at this guitar. I'll tell you more about it, and I'll tell you more about what my company wants to do with guitars. So, a guy who I know through Instagram contacted me one day when I said I was going to make some baritone Strats or Tellies, and he wanted to put a spec together for me to make. So yeah, I'm really thankful that he's given me my first order. I've also got another order in the pipeline as well now. And I've been tinkering and playing around with this baritone Strat model for a while. So when he actually approached me and I had to put in concrete sort of position what I wanted to do with it, I was ready. So here we go. This is an older body and it is a lightly roasted maple neck. I don't think you need to use roasted maple for a baritone. Some people think it adds stability. I think each piece of wood is different. I've actually made 2 roasted maple necks before that I've had to scrap for various reasons. One of them cracked. It was too dry. And that's the thing about having a small company like this, or a small guitar building outfit, is I will only put out the things that meet the standard I want. I don't have to meet a quantity of guitars or a deadline. But saying that, I was commissioned for this in early October or late September. And so it's taken about 2 months, which is really not bad, I think. Anyway, so an alder body, my favourite wood for Strats, a roasted maple neck, but lightly roasted, and just a transparent gloss over that, which I've gone as thin as I can. I love a thin neck spray. I don't want it to feel too thick under the fingers. and a rosewood fretboard with homemade clay dots. Now, the guy whose guitar this is, I don't know if he wants me to say his name, so I won't, came round to my house because he's based in London and brought a vintage Fender, I think it was a Jaguar, early 60s one, in a beautiful aged white. I mean, it would have been, I guess, Olympic white, but it's become aged massively over the years. This was a great guitar in so many ways. One of the things I loved was the neck pocket and join was just so bad, but it didn't really affect anything. Structurally, it was sound. It's 60 years old, it's still here, and it sounded great. That's something I want to do. SmokeStack Guitar Co, Electric Guitar Co, is going to be about a fine balance between, you know, very structurally sound, very playable instruments, but ones that look like they might have come out sometimes of the factory on a day when they might have run out of the right type of screws, or, you know, just something slightly off kilter. And that's just who I am as a person, and that's what I want to produce. On this guitar, for example, I didn't have all the right pickup screws, so 4 of them are correct and 2 of them aren't. Does it make any difference to the way it works? No. But that was what I had on my bench. And how can I put this in a very concise way that's, okay. For me, following perfection in guitar building can lead to some great outcomes, but also can lead to lots of instruments that I've not enjoyed personally. Because when you decide to go for absolute perfection, there's so many decisions you make that you err on a conservative side, or you err on the side of doing everything exactly as you think everyone wants you to. But for me, I want these guitars to look like it was maybe the one hanging up at Denmark Street for a few months and full of character. And yeah, maybe it's the one that's a refin or not all original parts, and so it's more of a player grade. So really like player grade, vintage style. It's had some modifications, you know, maybe, you know, it's got most of the original plastics and they look all old, but maybe a control knob had split in half and they had to put a new one on. Well, someone might just put a new one on. They're not necessarily going to age it or even choose the same color. Some might have gold lettering and some green. Some of the screws will be replacements. They should look new. Like, I want the aging and the relicing to be of that sort of personality, right? I don't want to just like sit and make batches of the things for the next 10 guitars and then just use them all perfectly from like a sheet that I make. Each guitar will have its own thing. It could be a mixture of, you know, like Phillips head and flathead screws, whatever it is. The day I make that guitar or the day I put it together governs how that guitar turns out. But the important thing is that I sit and play it here for a couple of weeks and make sure that the setup, the playability, the nut, the frets, all of that stuff is so important to playability. That's all done the way it should be, but the personality is there in other ways. So, yeah. Now, I'd love to hear this guitar through a different type of amp. Let's have a look and plug into something different. Okay, so that was a lot of fun. The Friedman Plex is a pretty wild amp, and I hadn't plugged the baritone into it before. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. But what I like with this, with the Strat thing, is that that translates through even at the longer scale length. So you do feel like you're playing a Strat. It's comfortable like a Strat, but also it has all the sounds just at that different sort of timbre. You know what I mean? Like tonally, it's a Strat, but it also has a slightly different flavour to it. But all the same sorts of pedals work really well. You know, your fuzzes and your tube screamers, you know, like the Duelist from Kingtone I've tried with it, the Blues Power. We're not going to hear everything in this video. This is literally my last working day of the year, and I really wanted to make this. So I haven't been able to record everything. But then also you heard the Bartel Starwood there in its tweed mode, and I was using the Valcoder by Catalin Bread, which is like a mimic of an old style amp tremolo with its own sort of preamp in it, which I thought was really cool. But yeah, I want to tell you more about the specs on this guitar. So obviously I told you about, you know, the alder and the roasted maple. The pickups in this are Ron Ellis pickups. The customer came to me and said, could he supply all the hardware and bits that he's already got waiting for a project like this, and I could reduce the price. So I reduced it by the same price as it would have cost me to you know, fulfill that part of it, right? He had a bridge that he got from Foley, you know, like Foley pickups. He had the Ron Ellis pickups, and he had, you know, tuners and everything. So my standard pickups will be Sun Bears, and the great thing, I have a, you know, Stuart and I are really great friends outside of guitar stuff now. We've built up a friendship, but the cool thing with Stuart, working with him, if you're making guitars as well, is the level of detail he can go to. So if I tell him it's for a baritone, he'll have a little think about what he's going to do for that. So those will be the standard, but I also will use Ron Ellis pickups if someone wants to pay the upcharge, or other makes really. But my favourite are Sun Bears, as you know well if you've watched this channel. And I want to use really like top quality hardware where I can and where people want to have that. You know, this has ViPots, you know, vintage inspired pickups. The company make an amazing set of pots that are more expensive than normal. So instead of being a few quid each, they're more like 12 quid each. But I tell you what, the sort of throw on them is just fantastic. It feels different to play, but also the physical feel, the smoothness is amazing. So for swells and things, it's incredible. What I haven't tried is maybe just using a volume VI pot, and the other two could be normal, you know, CTS, because I don't personally use the tone pot a lot. So I wonder how that marries together, and that would save a bit of cost as well. You know, the Pickguard, in this case, I actually got someone else to make the Pickguard for me, and then I've aged it myself. But going forward, I'll probably make most of the Pickguards. But, you know, although this looks like a Strat, I did custom design the whole thing to fit as a baritone. It was more involved than you might expect. But on top of that, I made the cavities so that you can put any type of pickup in them. So you could create other pickguards for humbuckers or P90s or Firebirds or whatever you want. And I think that's a really flexible thing to do. That's what the customer wanted originally, although we haven't made any other pickguards at the moment. We might do in future. But that's something I want to keep for this model, because I think baritones work really well with a variety of pickups, especially humbuckers. I love, like on my Castadosa. And SmokeStack. Why the name SmokeStack? It took me a while actually to come to a name. I was going to do, you know, Holding. That's my surname. But it doesn't have the ring to it. Do you know what I mean? Like Fender, or like, you know, I really like Giordano guitars, that sort of Italian name, or Gretsch. It has an interesting sound. My name's not quite got that. And SmokeStack to me gave me two images in my head. You know, I'm from London, and London, you know, has been, or is known as a very busy world city full of big buildings, and it used to be full of industry and you know, like sort of the river and industry and all that stuff. Anyway, so that's that. But really, I was thinking about the Delta. You know, you've got like Smokestack Lightning, and I just could imagine like sort of Delta shacks with, you know, like smoke coming out of a little chimney or whatever. But the idea is that I want to create instruments that ultimately will be like sort of inspired by the way I like to play, the sort of bluesy stuff, the sort of early classic rock, and all of that R&B type stuff. And also the sort of slightly scruffy around the edges thing. So yeah, SmokeStack. B62, well, 62 is a great year for Strats. B, baritone. My Telecaster baritone is B52, 52, a great year for tellies. And then I've got a model I'm working on as a prototype, which is a sort of offset, but it's going to be more of a rock and roll machine. I'm actually making one with a scale length like the PRS McCarty scale length, so 24.594 inches, I think that is, off the top of my head, which I'll show you next year, early in the new year. It's quite far along the process, and that's been great fun to come up with. I'm actually making that for, the prototype is going to be for Stuart at Sunbear, so he's been helping me think about things and what pickups we'll use and all sorts. But I'll leave that bit of excitement for then. Yeah, so look, there's no website yet for SmokeStack, but either email me, I'll leave an email address in the description, or follow me on Instagram. I'll put 2 Instagram addresses there. There's James on Guitar, which is my normal one, and then I've created one for SmokeStack, so you could follow both. But here's an idea I wanted to put out there. It's a tough time in the world at the moment, and for all sorts of reasons, but economically it's tough. And probably not the best time to be starting a custom guitar company. But just so you know, this standard baritone is about $3 and then there's upcharges for things if you want like a better case. So there's a standard hard case, but if you wanted like, you know, like a mono or whatever, or the pickups or something, that's $3, $3 to $3.5 grand, depending on the specs, you know, because I can do binding and I can do all sorts, right? But what I want to do is the odd raffle. Now, I've done raffles before as a charity thing, but this wouldn't be a charity thing. This would be SmokeStack raffles. Stuart said, why not call them Rafflecasters? But my idea is like a community decided guitar. And what I would do over the course of a number of weeks is I'd put out polls on my YouTube page, basically asking Strat or Tele style, baritone or standard length. And then we could choose what colors, we could choose what color of pickguard, we could choose how relict it's going to be, you know, all fun details. And then basically that will go up for raffle. And so for a few quid a ticket, you know, someone anywhere in the world could win a guitar made just for them, you know. So I think that's an idea I'm working on. Let me know in the comments what you think about that. Do you think that's something you'd be interested in? Okay. Well, last thing I wanted to talk about was relicing. All my guitars are going to be relicked. It's part of the process that I enjoy, and they're not all going to be heavily relicked. This one is sort of medium. Well, the customer wanted it to look relicked, but not mentally so, sort of like a bit journeyman-ish. There's a small amount of relic. There's some really nice lacquer checking. I use a nitro, clear nitro that's very low plasticizer or no plasticizer, like very similar to the original stuff. So it cured and cracked really beautifully the way we wanted it to. And, you know, I've aged the metals. These were mostly pristine, you know, all the plastics were pristine and everything. And I guess like with most companies, you know, there's going to be a process over the next couple of years of coming up with my sort of perfect recipes for everything. But as it stands, I'm putting my all into it at the moment and experimenting and having a lot of fun with it. So if you like what you see, just, you know, let me know. And, you know, we can always even work on a whole new thing. I'm really excited to sort of expand the horizons. You know, this is going to start with these Strat and Tele types. I've got my own offset shape that I said I'm prototyping, but I'm going to be doing set necks eventually. And I want to come up with some interesting models that, you know, are really cool. So if anyone wants to work on a prototype because they've got an idea, then let me know and we'll see what I can do. Right, I'm going to finish off with a bit more playing on both the Friedman Plex and the Starwood. So yeah, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think down in the comments, and I hope you have a lovely Christmas and a great new year. I will be back in the middle of January, probably. A few things are in the way until then. But anyway, have a good one. Cheers.